Hello, guys. David Vos here. Well, friends, there's a lot of things going on in the world today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'd like to talk to you about a few things. I want to read you something here. It says, well, if you look at the picture there, you see what they're claiming is a tropical storm, and it's moving into the Caribbean. So that's something that could be a problem. I mean, maybe not hurricanes or it's not going to necessarily, they claim it could reach Florida, but it's probably not going to be much of a threat because it's just a tropical storm, 50-mile-an-hour winds, but they're saying it'll probably get up to around 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it will bring a lot of moisture. So there could be a lot of heavy rains. But I want to read you this. This is the Atlantic hurricane season hasn't amounted to anything so far this year. Yet the National Hurricane Center is putting us on alert for Tropical Storm Fiona. It will strike Puerto Rico tomorrow, and then they're really not sure. What they do seem certain of, however, is that it will increase to hurricane strength. Could turn hard north, stay well out in the Atlantic, or it could also head into the United States East Coast. But we have some more pressing information for you. The story over here about Russia. As you know, all over the web, everywhere you look, on Google or YouTube, they're claiming Russia's falling apart. So, I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. In fact, I find it very interesting that there's almost nowhere you can go. And you can go over to that other platform that, we talk about where I'm at. You can go to Rumble or Truth Social or whatever. I haven't actually gone to Truth Social, but every place I've been on Facebook and YouTube and everything, I can't find any encouraging news for Russia. Why, it looks like Russia's almost done. A world superpower with nuclear weapons and all this, KGB, and they're running around. Seems like they run half the world, right? They got that Kazakhstan and all these Chechenias and all these things like, they used to be the Soviet Union. They had control of the whole area. But all of a sudden now, this mighty empire they're claiming is about to collapse because of a little war, a little skirmish in the Ukraine. I guess, according to them, a couple of thousand tanks are gone, and they've shot down 4 or 5 airplanes, and maybe 100,000 of their troops are dead or something. I don't know if any of this is true. But what if all of that were true? Does that mean the end of their regime? Is it that easy? Because think about it. If Russia went to war in the first place, they must have known that this could happen. It could turn into World War III. A government like that doesn't get scared. It's not like up to a person who pulls back and doesn't draw his gun because he's too scared or whatever. We're talking about somebody like Putin who just makes demands, probably has somebody telling him what to do. And if you really want to know the truth, whoever's running the world is telling Biden and Putin what to do, and they really don't have a choice. So the powers that be know what they're going to do, and they're not going to stop this. They want World War III. They want depopulation, and they want the famine that's coming. They want the pestilences, and they want all the problems that is going to come. They want the deportations of many peoples. They want riots. They want anarchy. They want this because out of the ashes shall arise the new world order. Do you understand? They want the new world order. We can agree to that, can we not? Well, if they want a new world order, you would have to bring the old world order down. And that has to be the destruction of communism and capitalism. The seat of communist power is probably Moscow and Beijing, but primarily Moscow. And in trying to decide where you would put the capitalist regime, you might say the United States or Washington primarily, and then London, perhaps Berlin or something. The Switzerland Bank, that's part of the one world government. All that's got to go down. Everything. In order to bring the one world government to fruition. So in order to do that, you have to get rid of a lot of people, because the people aren't going to stand for it. And when the New World Order comes, it's got to be peace. Or what's the point? You can't have anarchy when you finally rise the New World Order up. So by the time they establish it, it's got to come from complete destruction. So you know then that they're not planning on giving the orders to Putin to just give up. So if Russia really is in dire straits, which I guarantee they're not, if they lost 100,000 men and 100,000 tanks, that wouldn't be the end of them. I mean, they probably got millions of people that could, and China would come and help them. And they got the Chechnya army coming to help them, and all these other places. They're not done. I mean, certainly the people that they had in there already were probably just their old weapons that they went down in there, to take over a little country called Ukraine. They didn't think it was going to be much of a problem. Maybe it's just a battlefield where the United States sends a lot of their old stuff, and they send their old stuff, and they see who's, it's like playing around for the news, a dramatic stage of events. They want the world to think a certain way to get us into the real war. We're not in the real war yet. So they want to make it look like, for the West, oh, this is going to be easy. They're about to give up. Let's go in there and we'll have a one world government of peace. And, we won't have to deal with all these ideas of food shortages. I mean, Europe's being threatened right now. If they don't go in, they're not going to have any oil if they don't win Russia. So they got to tell them, yeah, we're winning. Well, the other idea would be to say, okay, we're sorry, Russia, you can have Ukraine. Well, you know that they're not going to do that. So they just got to convince the Europeans that everything's going to be fine. Don't worry, we're winning. That will continue the war for us. I imagine in Russia, we're not hearing what they really... You hear stuff coming out of Russia where somebody said, oh, I live in Russia and I am a Russian and I hate Putin and everybody's trying to kill Putin. And, we've had two stories in the last, few days where supposedly Putin's car, the beast, the bulletproof car that drives him around. They have several of them in a train, so you never know which one he's in. So they do the same thing here in America. Well, his car got hit, and it was an assassination attempt. Well, we also heard, I think it was yesterday or something like this, Zelensky's motorcade got hit too, and his car was, they had an accident. Somebody ran into it or something. It was terrible crash. It looked like somebody could have died. Well, they claimed he was all right. So, according to them, there's been two staged assassination attempts on both sides. But you see, again, either they're just, like we said, staged to keep the narrative going, to make people think that everything is real. But I guarantee that in Russia, the news there is they're winning. Europe's about to... why wouldn't they tell their people what's going on? Even we're getting information about how the Russians have struck all of the electric plants, many of them. They have taken out the nuclear power plant. They're not going to have any energy for this winter. So if they better hope they're winning, because if winter comes and they ain't won, they're going to go down. They ain't got no fuel. There won't be any heat. They'll be freezing. That's really cold up there. Ukraine borders like 50 miles from Moscow. We're talking about way in the north where it's very cold. They're not going to have any food. It's a war-torn country. They're not farming. The Netherlands has quit farming. California's quit farming. We're not going to have any food. The trains and the railroads are going on strike. We're not going to be able to get the food there. We don't have any gas. Or if we do, it's very high price. So gas prices go up. The food prices go way up. So we've got all this going on. And this is happening to us and Europe, capitalist countries, where our price of gas, which is one of the big expenses we have, is tripled, doubled, whatever. And it could go much higher when winter comes, because they've now shut off the pipeline to France. They've shut the pipeline off to the rest of Europe. They got no oil, from what I understand, almost none. And of course, here in America, not to be outdone, Biden has shut off all of our oil too. Isn't that interesting? He closed down the pipeline that was going to be going through North Dakota and Canada or whatever. And he's made it illegal for them to go and drill new oil, right? He hasn't made any more permits for them to go and drill new oil, or, we got to preserve Alaska for the little critters because everybody's dying, so we can't drill anymore. So they're making electric cars, which most of us can't afford. So this is all, orchestrated for sure. And so it's not going to end. Russia's not going to lose. The war hadn't even started yet. So listen as we look at this. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs this morning issued a final warning to the United States and NATO regarding the Ukraine. And trust me, like I said, this is just for our entertainment. Both sides is on the same side. The elite have no loyalties to either one of the countries. Their plan is to make a one-world government. Probably the Queen was let go, right, rather than actually passed away. Because the new era, we've got to have the king in place. And like I said, I know a lot of you don't remember, probably. You're too young or something, and you don't remember, but there was never anything. We didn't have kings and queens 50 years ago. I mean, maybe a couple hundred years ago, there was a king and a queen and a colonizing around the world, a colonialism and all of this stuff, and people literally had to go by some royal bloodline that was king, and we did what he said. But we have parliament, we have Congress, we have these kinds of things, and we elect people, supposedly. Of course, we know that's not true. They just do whatever they want to do, but they have the charade of voting and all this, of course. But they want us to look at, it's the reality that we live in because everybody believes it, so it's reality. And almost everybody from the top down believes that it's real. And there's only a very few people, maybe there's a few people at the top. I don't know if people like Elon Musk or Trump knows anything going on. Maybe they do. But more than likely, a lot of these people like worker is just a pawn. I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk is also a pawn. I don't know who's running the show. Probably the devil, okay? I'm sure. The devil and his demons, and they may have a few people that knows something like, okay, do this and do that. They know what they're told to do. Some of them may know they're talking to demons, and some of them may be completely out of their mind on drugs somewhere with little electrodes going to their brain, sitting in some chair and some, I don't know. Maybe that's what, what's really going on. We don't know. But the world is, there are people that are awake, that know what's going on. That's us, the peasants. We're down here going, even though we don't know what the elite, their plan is, we're not possessed of Satan like they are, right? So we might have our own mind, and if we found out something, we would riot or anything. They don't want to spook the sheep, right? They don't want to spook the cattle. So they don't let us know. And they don't let the people at the top really know. They just tell them what to do. They don't fully and completely know. Maybe they tell them, hey, do what we're telling you. It's going to be good. We're going to have a new government. Everybody's going to be fair, right? But we got to get rid of the old government, and it's better for them. These little peasants don't know what's good for them, but we're trying. They're just a bunch of lawless people. They're hurting one another. The pollution's got to stop. We have to, or else the world's going to come to an end. So if they're telling them that, they might believe it, and they might think that they're doing, like, even when they're in the middle of their orgy and they're sacrificing the pig on an altar or whatever, they may still believe that they're doing the right thing because their conscience is seared. They can't turn back. They just, they don't hear from their conscience anymore. But that's all we know. We really don't know what's going on. And like I said, so that means that maybe even Putin doesn't know what he's just being told to do this, that, and everything. But it's going to go full steam ahead. Their plan isn't one side's going to win or the other side. Neither side's going to win. We're not going to win, guys. Russia's not going to win. Europe's not going to win. Who's going to go first? I don't know. Probably be casualties on both sides. But the casualties aren't going to come just from war. That's going to be the beginning of it. Famine's coming to everywhere around the world. Okay. Then disease. And then their man-made disorder of weather, and they can drop bombs and cause earthquakes. They can blow up bombs under the ground deep. CERN may be causing a lot of the earthquakes. We have no idea why they even have CERN. They can tell us it's because they're doing experiments to figure out how to, make the world a better place. That's what they told us when they made the nuclear bomb. Right? This is nuclear energy. It'll be pure energy. We'll be able to use it and help the world. No, it's a bomb to destroy us. And it's coming from the devil. But do you think Einstein did it on purpose? Like he's like, I'm going to make a bomb to kill the world. No, he probably was told, here's the formula. We're going to put your name on it. See, you're going to be famous. Oh, everybody's going to think you're so smart. Yeah, he's got a PhD or something. But that doesn't mean they know anything. None of these people know what a computer is or how it works or how CERN works or look, it's just all information coming right straight from Satan. These factories are build computers. Nobody in that factory or anywhere in the world knows actually how to build any of the stuff on, by themselves. Everybody, the manager, the salesman, the owner, the CEO, everybody, the stockholder, nobody knows what's going on. We're just doing what we're told. So, this is like you go to a movie set. So, well, who's in charge? Well, maybe it's the director. All right, you go to the director and he's being told by the producer what he needs done. So you go to the producer. The producer's saying, well, I'm being told by my financiers what they want me, the propaganda they want me to put out. So you go to the financiers and they're like, oh, well, we're just working for somebody we don't really know who. Some company called BlackRock. You go to BlackRock, you interview them. They're like a bunch of old men that are just so loyal. They've gone through all these vows. They know they can trust them. If they don't, they'll kill them. They come up missing. These are people who have gone up through the ranks. Not that they're smart, not that they've ever taught them anything, but they've gone up through the ranks so that they will never tell. And by the way, going up through the ranks, talking about going up through the ranks. Of course, we know this was a society that was created by some individuals like 500 years ago in Bavaria. They created the Illuminati. I mean, it was, well, we've talked about that many, many times. But this society, this order, these individuals in their secrecy have gone all over the world and made different organizations. They're all coming under the umbrella. One of the major organizations that is just beneath the top that run a good portion of the world, that have a lot of influence, is the Mormons. We also have Jehovah's Witnesses. We have Moonies. They're very important over in Korea. We have Hollywood. We have CIA. We have KGB. These are all organizations created by the Bavarian Illuminati. We have the the takeover of the Catholic Church. I mean, there are various takeovers. I mean, they got, who knows? I mean, exactly all of the different takeovers that's happened. But what I wanted to mention is that as far as people just doing what they're told, a good example, I just saw this little video where this lady went into the Mormon temple to go through they have these ceremonies, you know, when you go into the temple, when you're married in the temple and you're sealed. Now remember, this has nothing to do with Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith didn't, when he was alive, they didn't do any of this. All these temple ceremonies and this stuff, which is just patterned after the Masonic order, didn't happen until they went to Salt Lake. Joseph Smith never went to Salt Lake. The moment they took off and went to Salt Lake was when they actually had killed Joseph Smith. And it was a takeover by the other Masons. These Masonic individuals came and took over the prophet's people and all the people that were there. But today we have this whole temple ceremony stuff that the Mormons do, and they have these vows and this secrecy, and they run them as presidents and senators and governors and state police and all this other stuff, chief of police. They own the entire government of Idaho, Utah, Nevada, and other places. In California, they're big in California. But I was listening to this woman describe her marriage ceremony in the temple, being sealed in the temple. And she said, as she was witnessing this event, they started showing these dramas, and they had somebody that was dressed up like Satan, and it was like a drama of the Garden of Eden. So they had somebody that represented Elohim and somebody who represented the devil. And the devil starts giving commandments to Adam and Eve. And she says it struck her as very odd that in the temple ceremonies, the church was told to do what the devil said. And this is when she started grasping, once you get up through the ranks and you go into the temple. Now, at first, you're going to see this and you're going to say, well, how come we're following the devil? And they're going to, oh, no, that doesn't mean what you saw. That's beyond your comprehension. No. They'll tell them some lie about, oh, this, that, or other thing. But they're exposing themselves. They're telling you the truth in the temple. If you go in there, as you go up the ranks, they tell you more and more and reveal more and more. They're following the orders of Satan. All these secret organizations, including the Mormons. They don't follow Jesus Christ. Just to let you know. Anyway, they only know what their job is. They get their instructions every day. Remember how 007 would get his instructions and he would just go do it? He didn't know why. He trusted that whatever he was doing, if it was the United States telling him to, or whoever it was, the European government or whoever was telling him to go and assassinate somebody or this or that. It was like they always tell him, oh, it's critical for world peace. You've got to do it. This is bad. It's a bad guy. Kill him. Take him out. Right? But as far as he knows, he thinks he's working for the good side. He believes there's a good side. And the other sides believe in the same thing. They got their spies working for them. So this is what's going on. Nobody really knows what's going on. But I guarantee that Putin's not going to give the orders to give up. They're going to tell him to continue on. And all the propaganda we're hearing about them losing, it's all propaganda. They're getting different propaganda on their side. So this is a staged thing. It's for your eyes only, right? This is what they want you to see on Fox News, CNN, and they want you to know that this is getting serious now. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a final warning. So we know that we're about to go to World War III. And they said if the United States decides to supply longer range missiles to Ukraine, they will cross the red line. They cross the Rubicon, right? And become a direct party to the conflict. This sounds like so dramatic, right? This language. Is this what Putin actually said? Who did they get this information from? Oh, it's a journalist. They went over there and the Russian prime minister or foreign affairs or whatever told him, right? Well, who told him? Did he go in and have a meeting with Putin? Putin said, I want you to say this. We don't know. I'm sure the KGB runs Putin, and I think the CIA runs Trump and Biden. And one of the guys in the government's going to be the bad guy. They want you to think there's conflict over in Russia, that some people in the government of Russia wants Putin out of there, and they're trying to assassinate him. It's all propaganda. And if they did assassinate him, it would be again because maybe Putin decided he didn't want to do what they said, so they had to assassinate him. But as long as Putin does whatever they say, they're not going to assassinate. I don't even think Hitler committed suicide. I think they took him off like Epstein to an island. And I don't think Hitler or the Nazis lost the war. I don't think the United States lost. I don't think Russia lost. I think they all won together, and they made a plan. They said, listen, here's what we'll do. We'll claim that Russia and the United States won and Germany lost. But all the German scientists and the political people like Schwabi and, Elon Musk, the grandson of Werner von Braun in Project Paperclip comes over here. These people are just still running the governments on both sides. The space agencies for both sides and everything. They faked the moon landing. They faked the idea that we got nuclear, right? The little rocket man over there just trying to scare everybody just so we'll give them money. Well, we have to have a military of $1 trillion and all your, why? Because there's a threat. Little rocket man, a little guy over there in that little bitty country with a flag that's red, white, and blue. Huh. Interesting. We're propping him up to scare ourselves so that we'll give more money and dig deeper. So anyway, this is the final warning, and it was spoken by Maria Zakharova, spokeswoman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is now a rapidly developing story. Check back for further updates. Serious new developments. China publicly supports Russia. The actions in the Ukraine. China is publicly supporting Russia. For those who have been paying attention to the international affairs, the following will come as no surprise. For others cheering for Team Ukraine, however, the following should be a gigantic wake-up call. It isn't just Russia handling Ukraine. It's China, too. Li Zhanshu is the head of China's legislature, the chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. He's number 3 in the rigid hierarchy of the CPC, a very high big fish. So where is Mr. Li last week? Well, at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russia. He met and talked with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now remember, they've got some sort of, China and Russia are in this together, including other countries, many others, just like we've got our allies. This ain't going away soon, guys. They're gearing it up. This is what he told the Duma. Pay very close attention. We see the United States and its NATO allies are expanding their presence near the Russian borders, seriously threatening national security and the lives of Russian citizens. We fully understand the necessity of all the measures taken by Russia aimed at protecting its key interests. We are providing our assistance. Huh? Now look at that. Let's go back and maybe you lost what we're talking about. This is Li, the third in command of China. He's over in Russia and he makes this comment. We see, that's the Chinese, they see the United States and NATO expanding the presence near the Russian borders. And so we are providing our assistance. China's going to provide assistance. Now, they've got a navy bigger than just about anybody's navy in the world. They've got an army that rivals ours. They have nuclear weapons, everything. This is not going away anytime soon. In fact, there's probably going to be more fronts, war fronts, opened very soon. And in fact, another war front just opened in Armenia, I think yesterday. So China's President Xi Jinping and Russia's President Putin will have a special meeting on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Samarkand Summit tomorrow. They will discuss Russia's special military operation in Ukraine in detail. Then afterwards, we may be able to ascertain what Li meant when he said we are providing our assistance. Then we got France. who warns that natural gas prices to rise 500%, electricity to rise 1,000% in 2023. That means after, the dead of winter is what they're really talking about, January, when it's cold. They're not going to have oil, they're not going to have natural gas, and they're not going to have electricity. Because, who can afford, if your bill's $100 a month and it goes up 1,000%, you can't afford electricity. And if everybody tried to use their electricity over there, which is why it's gone up, because they don't want you to use it, why it would shut down the grid. They don't have electricity. That's what that means. They don't have natural gas. That's what that means. And so what that means is they're going to freeze to death and they're going to starve to death. You understand that. This is coming this year, in January, and maybe a little before. Who knows? The Prime Minister of France announced yesterday that the French people should expect natural gas prices to rise 500%. Well, guys, that train is blowing his horn in the background, and I'm not even going to stop. I'm just going to keep going because it's going by every 5 minutes, and I can't. I was trying to do this without the train in the background, but I'm just going to have to just try to talk over the train, guys. I'm sorry. They're just going by. I think they're trying to get a lot of the shipments gone, through before they do the strike. It's CSX, which is the third largest, transit around here in the trains. I went and I got some pictures, and it's oil cars that they're moving right now. Every 10 minutes down the tracks. Boom, boom. It's crazy. So, electricity is to rise 1,000% over 2021 prices next year. Elizabeth Borne is a French politician who has served as Prime Minister of France since May of 2022. A civil engineer, a government official, and manager of state enterprises in the transport and construction sectors. Sorry, guys, trains going by. But, it's apropos because you got to know what's going on here with the trains. It's crazy. They're just going by every 5 seconds. Borne previously served as Minister of Transport and Minister of Ecology. She announced yesterday that prices for natural gas and electricity will skyrocket throughout France next year. They keep saying next year, it means beginning now, right? It's January or something like that. This due to economic sanctions being applied against Russia over its special ministry operation inside Ukraine. For decades, Russia has supplied cheap, plentiful natural gas to most of Europe. But when Russia drew a red line at the idea of Ukraine joining NATO, and when Ukraine began using its army to attack civilians in the states of Luhansk and Donetsk, collectively called the Donbass, Russia felt forced to take action. They entered Ukraine on the February 24th, 2022 to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine. For some reason known only to the divine being, France, the rest of Europe, and the United States sided with the Nazis in Ukraine and began sanctioning Russia. No one in the United States or European Union would be buying Russian natural gas or oil. This forced most of Europe to try to get natural gas from other places, but those other places were already supplying much of the rest of the world. So when all the new buyers came from Europe, prices skyrocketed. Now people in France and the rest of Europe are seeing utility bills that are about 10 times higher. Friends, you can't do this and expect everything to continue as it's been. It's not going to be normal anymore. In fact, it's going to be very, very bad when this kicks in the next couple, 3 months. Maybe sooner. We're going to be starving, even here in the United States. Once it hits there and they collapse, then it's like dominoes, guys. Now, this whole thing's not going to just collapse and it'll be gone tomorrow. The collapse may take 2, 3, 4 years. We don't know. It could be dire situations for the next couple of years. I suspect on into Trump's presidency. This will probably catapult Trump to the presidency. All the things going on, the anarchy and stuff. And somewhere, maybe near the end of Trump's presidency, he could fix things or make it look like it's better or declare a one world government and everybody's got to keep some Abrahamic accord, but they declare peace and security. And then the Bible says sudden destruction shall be upon them. So I suspect things to start getting really bad this winter, and they'll get worse and worse. And right about the time Trump takes over, it's going to be really bad, and it'll be bad for about 3 years after that. Because we know that the tribulation, the real bad part of the tribulation, is 3.5 years. This is a guess, but it's pretty accurate knowing what we know. So the utilities are passing along the increased price they must pay for the natural gas, and it's forcing people throughout Europe to choose whether they eat or have lights on. I mean, it's going to be worse than that. They're not going to be able to eat either. People have no idea what's about to happen. You say, well, this could never happen. It happened before in World War I and World War II. Millions of people died. They don't care. The Bible tells about a time called the flood when everybody died. Sodom and Gomorrah, they all died because the gods were mad. So, this is real. Notice this. Remember what I said, January? That's what it says here. This winter, everything will get all that much worse. When homeowners will have to choose between eating and heating. Friends, it's going to get to the point where you don't have to make that choice. You'll neither eat nor heat. For some reasons, elected public officials in France and elsewhere in Europe seem to think this is an acceptable position to be in. This is fine. We're winning. Don't you worry. Russia's going to collapse. Well, the question really is, who's going to collapse first? Russia's got oil, heating, electrical. And I'm hearing too that there's stuff going on with the satellites. There may be some Star Wars going on, and if they knock out a satellite, we won't have communication either, friends. So you might not hear any of my videos for a while if YouTube goes down. You might not have electricity. You might not have water, running water. They don't actually have running water in some places in the United States right now. The water is poison, by the way. Many, however, say that supporting the NAZIS in Ukraine is untenable from the start. And freezing Europeans to death in their homes because the self-inflicted sanctions have raised prices so much, it's an absurdity. So now there's a political pushback from the general public against the economic sanctions. That's why they've got to have this whole blitzkrieg of propaganda on the TV everywhere around the world saying they're winning. Because the people are getting restless. Then we've got Al Omar oil field in Syria just blown up. U.S. theft of oil from there halted. So I guess the United States has been taking the oil from Syria. And Russia had warned us and said, stop it. And we didn't stop. So Russia just bombed it and blew it up. The oil field at Al Omar, Syria has been blown up and it's presently on fire. This is one of the oil fields from which the United States has been stealing Syrian oil. It is not yet clear what caused the series of explosions, but initial and unverified reports say it was Russian Air Force missiles. Both Syria and Russia have repeatedly warned the U.S. they are not authorized to be inside Syria and should leave. In addition, both Syria and Russia have told the United States, Israel, and Turkey the theft of Syrian oil must halt. You see now why we went in to Iraq and took over Syria and Afghanistan. We got Turkey. We got Israel over there, right? Jordan, Egypt. We have the control. That's what they want so they can bring this one world government in. So they had to do it in stages. The U.S., Israel, and Turkey have ignored these warnings. Now the oil field from which they have been stealing is blown up. Russia strikes the reservoir dam, sends water surging downstream. The Russian army launched a missile attack on the Kryvyi Rih, the hometown of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. There were 2 attacks. The local administration did not announce in which parts of the city the defeats took place. Oh, but Ukraine is winning. Military observers tweeted that 295 MS strategic and nuclear bombers attacked dams and reservoirs in Ukraine. Oh, that's plural. Dams, plural, and reservoirs in Ukraine with a whatever missile that is. They have a range of 5,500 kilometers and carry 500 kilograms of explosive warheads. The deputy head of the presidential administration in Kiev, Kirill Timoshenko, announced that a total of 8 rockets were fired at Kryvyi Rih. Some missiles hit below the waterline of the dam across the Inglets River. The impact severely damaged the dam, and the water level in the Inglets River is now surging, several as seen in the video below. Interesting. Well, that looks pretty real. Electricity and fresh water is now cut off in Kryvyi Rih. This is now the second large demonstration of what Russia is capable of doing in the Ukraine infrastructure. The first being missile strikes against electrical stations a few days ago. So a few days ago, they wiped out electrical plants. So they won't have any electricity. Unlike the electric grid, which was rerouted, there's no way to make a quick fix to this dam. Then we've got Armenia invokes Article 4, collective self-defense of CTSO treaty. The world now has a second war front. Armenia's down there by Turkey. If we start, and somebody's bombed something in Syria, we just found out. So the war is going down into Armenia, it's going to be going into Turkey and Syria. Maybe, even though we haven't heard about it, but you know how the Euphrates is drying up? That's because Turkey's diverting the water. So maybe that's part of the reason why they're bombing that now. This is going to go into world war. There are going to be nations fighting against nations, the Bible says, and then it'll be all-out war all over the world. And it's already begun. Wednesday morning, the country of Armenia invoked Article 4 of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which calls for all member countries to come to a military defense of Armenia as neighboring Azerbaijan commences military attacks against Armenia. The world now has second war front after the ongoing Ukraine front. If one of the member states suffers aggression, armed attack menacing to safety, stability, territorial integrity, and sovereignty, it will be considered by the member states an aggression, armed attack menacing to safety, stability, territorial integrity, and sovereignty against all the member states of the treaty. Article 4 of the CTSO is akin to Article 5 of the Nato treaty. So now we got NATO and the Ukraine, and we got another sort of military member state group called CTSO. In case of aggression, commission, armed attack, to any of the member states, all the other member states, at request of this member state, shall immediately provide the latter with the necessary help, including military, as well as to provide support by the means at their disposal in accordance with the right to collectively defend pursuant to Article 51 of the UN Charter. The member states shall immediately inform the United Nations Security Council on the measures taken on the basis of this article. When implementing these measures, the member states shall adhere to the relevant provisions of the UN Charter. The article is amended by the Protocol on Amendments to the Collective Security Treaty of May 15, 1992, signed on December 10, 2010. Azerbaijan commenced artillery shelling and mortar fire into Armenia about 48 hours ago. Several hundred Armenian troops and border security forces are already dead. Armenian PM Nikol Pashinyan stated the Armenian side has 105 killed in action, with 100 more injured, including civilians. Georgia referendum on war with Russia. Now, Georgia's another state down there. It used to be part of the Soviet Union. Adding to the troubles, the country of Georgia is holding an actual public referendum on whether or not Georgia should reopen its war with Russia. The leadership of Georgia can organize a nationwide referendum and ask the question, do the Georgians want a war with Russia? Georgy Kovakadze chairman of the party, made such a statement at a briefing in the office of the ruling Georgian Dream Party. Let the people say whether they want to open a second front in Georgia against Russia. He promised that the authorities will act as the people say. At the time they spoke about this, the situation in Armenia did not yet exist. So Georgia was speaking as if their country would become a second front. Now, with the situation in Armenia, if the people of Georgia vote to open a new war with Russia, that will be a third war front. I expect this to go all around the world soon. There will be other fronts opening until it's one huge world war. The politician expressed hope that the Georgian people will bring clarity whether he agrees with the statement of the Ukrainian politicians about the need to involve Georgia in the war with the position of the authorities of his country. This is how Irakli Kobahides responded to the statement of Fyodor Vinlatsky, these names, representative of the president of Ukraine in the parliament. How do these people even speak over there? Like, you can't even pronounce these words. I'm so glad I don't speak this language. Who advised Georgia to take concrete steps to liberate Abkhazia and South Ossetia? Earlier, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council Oleksiy Danilov, as well as advisors to the office of the President of the Ukraine, Mykola Podolyak and Oleksiy Artizovik, publicly addressed Tbilisi and with the similar advice. They all directly said that the opening in the second front in Georgia is highly desirable. The head of the Georgian Dream recalled at the same briefing. So this is pretty crazy. Every third soldier in the Kharkiv offensive of the armed forces of the Ukraine is a citizen of NATO country. So they were talking about this Ukrainian offensive that they just pulled off over the last few days, where they, according to everybody, Russians retreated and gave up a bunch of their territory that they had already conquered. Well, they're saying that in this offensive that they pulled off, every third soldier, like 1 out of 4, is from NATO. The offensive operation of the armed forces of the Ukraine and NATO in the Kharkiv region was planned by the United States Military Command. About 200 units of heavy military equipment and up to 9,000 soldiers were involved in last week's offensive. So there were probably some temporary gains that the Ukraine actually did accomplish. But it wasn't the Ukrainians, it was the United States that organized it. They probably got their people on the ground giving them instructions. They've got satellites in the air. They've got, air cover or something. Who knows? But this isn't just the Ukraine fighting Russia. There's no way that Ukraine could fight Russia. But if they make any gains, it's because the United States is on the ground. The boots on the ground over there. And this is why we just got the warning from Russia saying, look you've crossed the red line. Reportedly, forensic examination of the dead bodies from the offensive revealed that 1 in 3 soldiers operating on the Ukrainian Chevron was a citizen of a NATO member state. Ukrainian Chevron, that's the same as Hebron. It's a Jewish word. The company, the gas station Chevron, it's owned by these people over there in the Middle East, of course, and you know who I mean. These forces were 4 to 5 times superior to the units of the DPR, LPR, and Russia that were defending their positions in the region. The main goal of the Ukrainian offensive was a flank attack, encirclement, and subsequent destruction of the Russian grouping in the area of Balaklia and Kupiansk and Izyan. Honestly, I can't figure out, how people could talk like this. It just sounds so weird. Honestly, who made this language up? It's crazy. The Russian command predicted the offensive of large forces of the Ukraine and NATO in this direction. It was aware that it would be extremely difficult to contain Ukraine's offensive with the forces that Russia had there. It was also virtually impossible to move sufficient reinforcements in time without weakening other areas on other front lines. Having assessed the risk, the Russian military decided to leave the weakly fortified positions and withdraw troops to new lines and straighten the lines of communication. See, this was just something that happened because the United States had brought in a bunch of troops and Russia decided to just pull back and not fight them. More of a retreat. Although we did hear the other day that there's reports that many thousands of the Ukrainians did die in that battle. And more than the Russians died in that. Before the start of the Ukrainian offensive, civilians were evacuated from the threatened settlements who agreed to move to the territory of the Russian Federation. So they were talking on our side, propaganda, that they had them on the run and they were fleeing and all of this. Well, it was a coordinated effort by the Russian military. From September 6th to September 11th, Russian units retreated in an organized manner under the cover of specially organized units. See, on this side of the aisle, they're characterizing it as they lost the battle, they retreated. They're saying many died. Of course, they're not going to show you the bodies, right? And I don't think it's true. Again, all of this is propaganda. The Russian military destroyed the pain of Kiev and NATO to encircle the Russian group. And remember, too, that the people that are on the ground fighting, they don't know what's going on. They think it's a real war. It is real because they're dying. And people in the military, the generals probably think it's a real war. Putin probably thinks it's a real war. Who knows? We just don't realize we're all pawns. Every one of you are a pawn in the cog of the wheel. At the same time, obvious mistakes were made by the Russian military. The area in front of the forward positions was not mined. Units on the front lines de facto comprised no more than 30% of the enumerated military personnel. Who knows? Maybe the Russians wanted us to think we were doing good, to lure us in more, and then they'll surround them or something. Who knows? The soldiers were not properly provided with anti-tank weapons. As a result, the artillery cover of the withdrawal was effective or ineffective in the first days of the Ukrainian offensive. Russian troops were withdrawn to new positions along the eastern bank of the Oskol River and the minimal losses. Meanwhile, both sides confirmed that Ukraine and NATO units have suffered significant losses in manpower. So this is a fact. Both sides have suffered significant losses. It is expected that within days, the official assessment of the Russian Ministry of Defense will be publicly acknowledged that the armed conflict in eastern Ukraine was definitively escalated into a state of war between Russia and NATO with unpredictable results for all parties to the conflict. So evidently it's going to become public that it's a war now, not just between Russia and NATO, or I should say Ukraine, but also a war between Russia and NATO. It's creeping up to a larger war on all sides. The assessment is important because the Ukrainian NATO side is the first, so far, at an unofficial level, to engage in NATO's direct war against Russia, while Russia continues to operate within the term special military operation, continuing to use limited forces and means. Remember, the Russians said that, well, it was a German person in their government, whatever, got up on their, as a legislator, I guess, and said that on the 24th of September, something really big is about to happen. Probably they're going to announce that World War III has begun, and maybe there's going to be some battles going, and who knows, maybe they'll shut the electric off, or the satellites will go out, or who knows. Something big is going to go down, guys. Given the new reality that this is, in fact, an actual war between NATO and Russia, military analysis and the Russian army have suggested it will be expedient to limit and complicate the provisions and supply of the armed forces of Ukraine to the utmost. They have told their Russian bosses that all routes for the supply of weapons and material and technical means, bridges, railways, highways, places of concentration of troops and military equipment must be destroyed. So I imagine Russia's going to start destroying bridges, dams, power plants, everything they can get their hands on. It's going to be a very, very, very dark winter, friends. It's widely understood within the Russian Ministry of Defense that no more offensive attempt by NATO forces should come as an unpleasant surprise to the Russian army. Cover intel reports that mobile reserves of both ground forces and artillery, as well as aviation, must be created by Russia to instantly respond to emerging threats. Blunt warnings from Russia Foreign Minister and Federation Council. Nuclear war coming. They're not saying maybe coming. They're announcing that nuclear war is coming. Ukraine sponsors have been given two tough ultimatums, one from Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the other from Russian Council member Dmitry Medvedev. The one-time success at the front last week is only beautifully shown in the press. The death toll along the entire line of clashes has exceeded 10,000. The wounded fill all hospitals. There is a shortage of ambulances. The Russian allied forces put the Nazis in one fight by hundreds. And then the political situation deteriorated. There were rumors in the Ukraine that it was Russia who retreated to make a camouflage maneuver before something grandiose. While the patriots were waiting for the respite, Russia hit the power facilities earlier. That's the electric plants. Commander-in-Chief Zelensky reported to Zelensky about the formation of a large naval group of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, including amphibious assault ships. Yeah, this is not going to go away anytime soon, friends. The West fears that the failure of the grain scam is to blame. First, Putin pointed out at the WEF that Russia and poor countries were deceived in the grain deal. Then Erdogan admitted. The UN Secretary General also had to admit this, although an attempt was made to wriggle out. In the USA, they said that everything was fine, but soon their experts still recognized the lack of proper effect from the increase in the grain on the market. Ukraine and more of its sponsors apparently have been given a tough ultimatum. Either grain goes to Africa and Russia opens an international food market, or the Russian Navy again blocks the Ukraine ports. See, they're talking about this deal they made to let some of the grain in Ukraine go to feed some hungry people. But what happened was they stole the grain and they're giving it to Europe. So Russia said, nope, you're not going to do that. So, yeah, this just shows you just how much they need that grain. And if they don't get that grain, then Europe's going to starve. In Africa and other places, they're going to starve to death. Well, Africa will starve or have a shortage because that grain is supposed to go to Africa and other places like that. But NATO, they don't have food either anymore, so they were trying to steal it. And the Russians said, you're not getting the grain. So you see, this is just showing you that the food shortages are coming. Anyway. It goes on and on. But the Russians quote scripture in Revelation chapter 9. We will get a lot of it too. It will be very, very bad for everyone. After all, it is said, from 3 plagues, from fire, smoke, and brimstone coming out of their mouths, a third part of the people died. And there are people saying that that might be referencing nuclear war. So, that was Dmitry Medvedev. He used to be the president of Russia, or the prime minister. Azerbaijan attacks Armenia, and we've seen that already. We've talked about that a little bit. But it says Russia not discussing mass military mobilization, Kremlin says. So the Russians are, there was rumors that they were desperate and they were going to draft everybody in Russia to go into the war, last-ditch effort, and it's, whatever. But Russia's saying, no, we're not doing that. Anyway, it looks to me like some serious things are going to happen, friends, this winter. Again, go now to the store, get you some beans and rice and, grains and whatever you might need, dry foods, dry coffee. It's coming, friends. And don't worry if you're a Christian. Not one hair of your head will be harmed. Stay close to the Lord. This is the wrath of Yahweh because the world's not obeying his laws. The Bible says it would come, but the Bible says of Christians that we're not appointed unto the wrath, and there is no condemnation in those who walk after Christ. So, that's the promise that we have as Christians, that we will be saved. And people have been throwing that word around for a long time, that salvation is just some little feeling that you get in your heart, right? No, salvation is deliverance. And the Bible tells you several times the deliverance is from the wrath that is to come. And this is the wrath that's coming. So it's time to start getting on our knees and praying to the Heavenly Father for His Holy Spirit. I'm going to go ahead and go, guys. Hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.